Hi, my name is Emily, and I teach children how to draw, how to paint, how to sculpt, how to do anything creative with their hands. I think it's very important for all of us to be able to have an outlet to express ourselves and to be creative. So that's what I do. I live in Lincoln, California, and I teach classes to children. So the first piece that we are doing today is this clay sculpted bunny that's painted with acrylic paints. Now, the supplies that you will need will be to get some clay. The clay that I use is Crayola air dry clay. This is my favorite because you don't need to bake it. You just let it dry on its own. So I usually get the white clay so that you can paint it any color that you would like. The next thing that you will need is some acrylic paint, and you can pick any color that you would like for your bunny. You could do them white, you could do them brown with patches, you could do black bunnies, anything that you would like. I always have a good variety of brushes. You'll only need a few for this piece. The paint that I use for the acrylic paint is just your generic paints that you can pick up at pretty much any craft store. You will also need a little bit of tacky glue, and that is just to glue your clay piece down to your cardboard, as well as some of the faux flowers that we did. This is a little piece of cut out cardboard that we'll paint in just a little bit. I also have a variety of flowers to choose from. I just like to have a big bin so you can pick any type that you would like. So I'm going to teach you guys step by step how to create your clay piece. Just keep in mind that your piece will not look just like mine, and that's the way you want it. You want it to be your own style, your own creation. So I did make a couple of little carrots in the beginning as well, just to add to our little rabbit for some fun. You could do anything you'd like. You could do a little bowl full of food, or you could do Easter eggs, or you could get really creative with this, but that's just what I did. So let's go ahead and start off with our bunny. I have my clay cut. This is about the size that I have used for all of my entire piece. And I have it in saran wrap because it does air dry. And so when I'm not using some of the clay, I like to kind of keep it wrapped just to keep it nice and wet and doesn't get all dry and crusty. So I take my clay out, and I'm just gonna turn you guys so that you can see what I'm doing while we create. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I take about half the amount of clay and I set that aside and put it right back into my saran wrap, just kind of cover it loosely so that I can use it later. So this piece right here is going to be for our actual bunny body without the head. So it's just gonna be this nice little curvature right here where the back is and where the little hind end is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my hands, my body warmth, to start to warm up the clay. It's nice and soft. And what I like to do is I like to start to create the round little curvature of the body. So typically what I do is I'll kind of flatten this down on this flat surface. I usually like to use a placemat or some sort of clean surface. And if there's any cracks, I just take my little fingers and I just mesh them along, and I create this little realistic looking bunny body. So I start to go in and just mold it. The best thing about clay is that if you mess up, you can just smush it and start over. That's the beautiful part about clay. So I just like to make it look sort of real, so don't worry about perfection so much. I feel like often, the more imperfect something looks, the more realistic that it tends to look. So if you have some of these little cracks, just sort of push them in. You'll see that your body heat starts to warm it and shape it. Now I've got a nice little bit of a curved body where, like, let's just say the back of the bunny body would be just a little curve here. This little hind end, this would be where the little legs would be tucked underneath the body. And this is where my head will go, right over here. So before I add my head, I'm going to take this front part of my clay and I'm just going to separate it right down the middle because I want to create what feels like two little legs, two little bunny paws here. So I'm going to go ahead and just separate these just a little bit, just to create that. Okay, so now you have what appears to look like some little bunny paws that will hide underneath the head. And again, you could make this any which way you would like. So for instance, if you want there to be no legs, no front legs, you could just have the bunny's head laying flat on top of it and you wouldn't see any legs at all. If you want to create some big floppy bunny feet in the back, you could totally do that. I did not do that for mine. I just pretended like they were tucked underneath the rabbit. Okay, so now we have what looks like two little bunny paws. Here's another sample as well that you can see that's not painted of two little bunny paws up in the front. And again, that nice curvature in the back. Okay, so I'm gonna set this little guy aside. And what I like to do is I like to put it on a paper plate. This acts kind of like a pedestal so that when I'm trying to paint, I can actually turn it as I go and have a little bit of lift to it when I need to get into the little details. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna grab my the rest of my clay and we are going to create a little tiny bunny tail. So you'll see this little tiny bunny tail back here. You can make it any which way you want. In fact, if you wanted to add a pom-pom that you happen to have at home, you could do that too. But I'm just gonna create a little bit of a bunny tail and I'm just gonna pop it right back on the back and you guys can make this as big as you want. The key to adding clay to another piece of clay is just to try to mold it a little bit to the clay so it becomes one and doesn't fall off and roll away as you're setting it down or putting it somewhere. So now you've got a little bit of a bunny tail, little cotton tail right here. Okay, now let's go ahead and work on the head. Now, I'm going to take a good size of my clay. You can work with it. If you feel like your head is too big, then take some of the clay off. If you feel like it's too small, you can go ahead and add more to it. So I'm gonna take some of this. I think, I'm gonna say this is probably a good size, a good amount of clay to start to mold into the shape of my head. Now I'm not doing the ears, I'm just doing the head. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it into a ball. That's going to get me a good starting point. It's going to get some of those little cracks and crevices out. So I'm gonna start rolling it into a ball. Now, once I get a ball, I'm going to start to take one side of my ball and start to get a little bit of a soft pull, a soft point to it. So you can see it's starting to point. It's not super sharp like a triangle, but it's just a little soft point. So it starts to get that bit of an animal head here. So it's gonna start to shape into a little bit of a point, not crazy, just a little bit. So now you can see it looks just a little bit like a head here. So now what I can do is this will be the bridge of the nose here. This will be my little nose in this spot right here. And the eyes are going to go on the side here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently, with my fingers, press in here just to create a little bit of an area where I know my little eyes are going to go. So now you can see here's an eye, here's an eye. This is the bridge of the nose and this is where the nose will be. This is the top of the head that we're just going to secure to our body here in a second. Now what I like to do, and this sounds odd, but I actually like to create a little bit of an eye socket. So I can take a back of a paintbrush, or you could take your finger if you have a small enough one. Don't use a toothpick. Don't use a real tiny little guy because you don't want it to poke a hole. You want to create an eye socket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently get this in here just to create a little bit of an eye socket to where I'll put some little rabbit eyes here in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and create what feels like two little eye sockets, not super, super deep. Otherwise, those little eyes will get lost. But as you can see on my sample here, oh, there goes our little ear. I guess I have to glue him on. So what you're going to do here is you're going to see that I put the little eyes inside there. And I'm going to show you how we're going to glue those ears on. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this little head to my bunny body. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our rabbit head and we're going to set it right on top where our little head would be. And I know that our rabbit still looks a little ghostly. He kind of looks like a turtle actually. Now, you don't want to leave it there. You actually want to secure the clay into the body so that it doesn't fall off. you really have to make sure that you're making it become one. And by doing that, you're going to start to mesh the clay, and you can go underneath, really start to make sure it stays onto the body. So push it on, continue to go all the way around. That way, it's really secure and stays on your little body here. Okay, sometimes when you're working, you'll find that your body starts to shift and you just have to go back in and just, okay, let's see, it's got smush. I'm just gonna round it a little bit. So now you can see my head is actually attached to the body at this point. Okay, so now that our head is attached, we need to add those ears on. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna take a piece of clay from my stash over here, and you guys need to decide, do I want to have a lop-eared bunny? Do I want to have a lop-eared bunny, or do I want to have a bunny that has the little ears sticking straight up, or maybe you want one ear kind of bent down and one straight up? So you can decide. I'm going to take a little bit of clay. Again, I like to always start with rolling it into a ball, really getting my body warmth into the clay and rolling it out into a little bit of ball. Once you get to a ball, you're going to go back to preschool, and you're going to go back and forth, kind of like you're doing a little bit of a clay snake. You're going to go back and forth, and as you go, you're going to see it's going to start to get longer. Once you get to this point, you can decide how long you want your ears. So you're going to come here, and you're going to start to press down. You want to make it a little bit thinner. Now remember, you don't want it thin like a pancake, otherwise it'll just crack. So keep this thin, but not too thin. So you can decide how pointy or how round you want those little ears. So now I have my first ear. Once I have my first ear, I'm gonna just kind of measure it and say, okay, am I good with this size? Yeah, I think I like the size of this ear. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to attach it really more towards the side of the head rather than on top. But if you wanna try doing it on top, go for it. So I'm gonna just, if you have it where you feel like it's a little bit too long, just pinch some off. That's the beauty of it. Now you can start to, again, mold that clay into the next one. Okay, really just drag it up like this. So now you have your first little lop-eared ear, okay? So then you're gonna go to the other side. Don't stress if your ears are not identical or they're not the exact same size or shape. You have to let some of that perfection go. Again, take some of that clay, you're going to roll it into a ball, and then you're gonna go back and forth like a snake, back in preschool. And once you get to this point, you can start to flatten your ear again. Okay, so now you're going to have another little bunny ear. Okay, so now again, do the same thing. You're going to put it up against your bunny, and it's okay if they're a little bit longer and they droop over. So look, it's a little bit tall on this side. I'm just gonna pinch some of that off because I like my ears to go to the side of the head rather than right on top. Okay, blend it in so it becomes one with the head. That's the important part. Make sure that it has become one with the head. Okay, so now we have our little rabbit ears, and those are all set. And you can kind of have them sitting or carefully laying flat on your little cardboard when we get to it. I still am not putting my little rabbit onto my cardboard piece yet because we want to paint that. Okay, so we've got our rabbit. I'm going to set him down. We need to add those little eyeballs. So the key to this one is they're going to be a little bit smaller than you think. So don't think you want big, huge jumbo eyes. Unless you do, maybe you want big charactery eyes, and that is perfectly fine. You could go for that. But I'm going to start with doing a little bit of clay, and you can see how tiny I'm doing them. I'm going to start with a small amount. Here's my little eye socket. I'm going to start with a little bit of clay, and again, roll it into a nice little ball. Once you get your ball, you're just going to go ahead and press it into your eye socket. So now our rabbit is starting to look a little bit more realistic. Go to the other side. Again, take a little bit of clay, roll it into a ball, and press it into the other side. Okay, so now you have two little rabbit eyes. You've got the shape of your nose, you've got the little ears, everything's attached, you've got your tail, you're good to go. So your rabbit now can go over to your paper plate. And we're just gonna set it there because we will paint that little guy next. Okay, the next thing that we want to create are the little carrots. Okay, so for our carrots, you're going to take some clay, and you can do as many carrots as you like. So let's say you want to do one jumbo one, maybe you want to do some lettuce, maybe you want to do like 4 little carrots. You can do anything you want. So what I like to do is I just take whatever size I'm thinking, and I like to do a couple different sizes just for fun. So I'm going to take mine, and again, I roll it into a ball just to get those cracks out. Roll it into a ball, and then I'm going to go back and forth, and all of a sudden it's going to start to look like a natural little carrot that was pulled from the earth. Remember, it's good when they're bumpy and they're odd shaped, because those are the ones that look real, like they're from the farmer's market, like they've just been plucked from the garden. Now I make sure that the top part of my carrot is a little bit thicker, has a little bit thicker base, and you can sort of flatten it if you like, because that way, in just a little bit, we can actually attach some greenery to it to make it look really realistic. Now at this point, you can, if you like, drag your fingernail or even a toothpick or a paper clip, and you can start to add some little lines in here if you like. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it's just kind of fun to make them look real. Don't worry about them being perfect. You just pop those little guys on. So there's carrot number 1. I'm just gonna add a second one. Again, grab your clay, make them any size you want. You're gonna go back and forth. And here's another one. Now you can see the difference in my carrots. One's a lot longer, and that's great because you want them to look different. No 2 carrots look alike, that is for sure. It's great if they're bumpy. Just make sure you've got a nice little base. Add those lines with your nails if you want, or not. It's just sort of fun to make them look completely unique to you. Okay, so we're gonna set those aside to our plate. Now, the next thing we're gonna do, we need to glue our little bunny ears back on, that's for sure. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to go in and we are going to make our paint happen. So we have our cardboard here. You can cut it out to any size that you like. I just cut this from a box. You will probably have some extra clay. You can take that clay and use it later, but definitely make sure you either put it back in your tub or you wrap it so that it's nice and tight and no air gets in there. That way you can play with it later. Okay, so we've got our little carrots. I might put mine to the side so it gets out of the way. We're gonna start with our bunny. Now, the very first thing that I did was I took a small brush, and with my acrylic paint, you don't need water. All you're doing is you're just dipping in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dip into the white, just because I really wanted to get a little bit of my bunny eyes white first. I just wanted them to look white. And the key to acrylic paint is that you do it really, really thin. If you do it too thick, you're just going to be super frustrated because all of a sudden you'll realize, oh, you know what? Everything is mixing into each other. Things are dripping. It's not working for me. So trust me when I say, do it nice and thin. You can always add more, but it's harder to take away. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a white eye socket. I just like the look of a white eye socket in my rabbit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do, since I have my white brush out already, I'll just go ahead and do the tail white. You don't have to do your tail white. You could do it any color you want. You could have it matching your rabbit if you like. So I'm gonna go ahead and dip my brush in. I'm just using the same brush because it's already out. Notice I'm doing it nice and thin, keeping it super thin. And I think I'm good. Okay, so now I'm gonna take my brush and I'm just gonna set it aside. And now we're gonna go ahead and create the rest of the bunny. Now, you can choose any color you want for your rabbit. It does not matter, there's no right or wrong way, but I'm gonna take my brush and I'm going to start with this medium brown here first. This is the one that kind of looks like chocolate milk. This one looks a little bit like chocolate syrup. So my base of my bunny, I want it to be this medium golden brown. So I'm gonna just dip in. I'll turn my rabbit to you guys. And I'm gonna go ahead and start with my body. So I'm just going to brush on that medium brown paint. I don't worry about it having to be too perfect because I feel like with this piece, you know, when it looks sort of staggered and imperfect, it looks like the fur on a rabbit. So if there's some areas that look a little bit thicker or thinner than others, I wouldn't worry or stress too much about it. I do try to keep my brush going in one stroke in the same direction rather than back and forth or swirling it around. I try to keep it in one direction, but hey, you might have a different feel for yours. So you can try it out and see what you like. If you need to, you know, take some of the paint off, if you have a mistake or you have an oops, just use a baby wipe or a little bit of a paper towel is fine. I'm gonna go real careful right up to my little bunny tail that I already painted white because I don't want those colors to mix, but don't stress out if they do. It can look like the markings for fun. Okay, so I've got the base of my body finished and I'm going to go to the front and I'm trying to decide. I think I might do my rabbit's front paws white. So I think I'm gonna leave that in there so that I can leave those little front paws white. So let's go back to our white brush, dip back in, and you can go back and make those little paws white in the front if you want, or you can keep them brown, totally up to you. Go to the other one, get right underneath. I don't ever worry about trying to paint the underside of my clay. So I never worry about like the underbelly or underneath everything because nobody's gonna see it and you might as well not get, you know, more paint and mess everywhere than you need to. Okay, so my bunny definitely needs to get his little head and ears done. So I'm gonna go ahead and set my guy down. But you can see why I use a plate so I can lift it up if I need to get into little areas. Okay, going down, back of the head, getting all those little areas that look like they need some coverage. I'm gonna go down to my nose. I'm gonna gently, carefully go up to my eyes. I've already done a little bit of white, but I'm just gonna go real careful. He's already coming to life and that is so much fun. All right, I'm gonna go right up here, go in here. He's looking really sweet. Okay, now you do, and this is again why I use your plate, is you can lift it up and say, all right, I need to get underneath his little chin because yeah, I am gonna see that part. So get his little chin, get all in there. All right, now we're going to go into those floppy ears. All right, I'm gonna cover this little ear here. Cover this little ear and I'm completely filling those in with this same brown. But if you have a different vision, or let's say the inside of your ears show, maybe you wanna do a different color. Maybe you wanna do the inside of them pink. And here's the other thing, is that you don't have to do your rabbit brown. You don't have to make them look realistic. Maybe you wanna have a pink bunny. Maybe this is, you know, you're doing something with some fun spring colors or Easter colors or rainbow colors, whatever you want. I'm sure some people would even add a little horn to make a little rabbit horn. Okay, so if there's any little areas that are showing, you just fill those in. So now you can see that my little rabbit is ready for his next shade. Again, you do not have to do another shade. You can make whatever color you want for this. This is just what I chose for mine. So I want to go ahead and add that dark, dark brown to mine just to make it look like there's some fur on there. So you can either use a fresh brush, or what I like to do is I just kind of wipe off some of the brown from this guy, and then I dip right into the darker shade. And this is where you can decide how much of that dark brown you want. And I like to just drag it along. I don't do it super thick, but I do like to bring it so that it looks super soft and realistic. Like you can see that light brown popping through in areas. You can really see that. So he looks real. This looks like his fur. Just drag it. All right. Get in the back of his little neck, turn it. Again, great to have a plate so you don't have to try to do this with your hand. Just drag it so it looks like fur, little short, quick strokes. Now he's looking real. He's got a little bit of shadowing and shading on him. I love it. I love how he looks. Okay, now I'm gonna go into the head, drag it up, and you may wanna decide to do some different, excuse me, some different markings on him as well. Okay. Drag it here, get the little face, and I'm gonna go right into those ears. Drag a little bit, and maybe you want them to be darker, maybe you want them to be lighter. Completely up to you, what you decide. Now add a touch more. Notice that I don't use tons of paint. I don't dunk my brush. I'm just doing little bits and adding a little bit here and there, because again, you can always add more, but it's really so much harder to try and take away. Okay, so I think he looks pretty cute. I love it. All right, he's adorable. I think he's good to go. Before I start to add my pink nose to my bunny, which you can see at the front, and again, you can do any nose you like. Before I do that, I wanna go ahead and do the black eyes. So I'm gonna put my brush down. Again, I'm going to grab a small brush. Now keep in mind, when you do your eyes, when you do small features, you're not going to grab the big jumbos, okay? You wanna grab the small brushes for those little itty bitty details. So I'm gonna look in my jar here, and I'm going to say, I think this one looks pretty good. This is a nice small brush. So when I say small brush, I mean like little bristles. So I have a little bit of my black here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to dip this in just a little bit, and I'm going to start to go into the eyeballs. So you can see having a small brush really helps to not get it everywhere. And anybody who uses the black with me knows that this black has a mind of its own. For some reason, black acrylic paint really just, it seems to get super messy, super easy. Okay, so you can see that I have one black eye finished here. I'm going to go to the second one. Again, I'm going to add a little tiny bit of black paint. Go to the other side. And I'm gonna start to do this eye. Now you could, for instance, pick a different eye color. So let's say you're like, you know, I think I really wanna do a dark brown. Go for it, you could do dark brown. Any color you want. I tend to pick a little bit more realistic looking color rather than say, you know, green or lavender or blue. I know some rabbits even have red eyes, which you could go that route too. But for me, I would personally probably stick with either the dark browns or the black. Okay, I'm gonna let that black just kind of sit for a few minutes before we add the reflection dot. I'm just gonna set my little brush down here. I'm gonna say, okay, now that those are sitting, we're gonna give them a minute just to set dry just a tiny bit. We're gonna go into our carrots. So let's go ahead and dip into our orange color here. So I'm gonna take another brush and dip into the orange, and you're just going to start to go into your carrot. And it's okay if all of your orange color does not go all the way into those little lines that you made. I think that actually gives it, again, that little bit more realistic look. Okay, dipping this guy. Just covering him. Your hands are probably gonna get a little bit orange. That's okay. We're just gonna set it down for just a minute. Finish the areas that you can really see. And I'm just gonna leave it right there. Okay, go. You don't need to worry about your hands yet. We're gonna go into the next one. I'll probably just set this little guy down here for now just to do him, because we, again, don't really have to worry about the underneath side. So I'm just going to paint my second carrot. And again, you can do something completely different. Maybe you want to do some purple cabbage, or maybe you want to do rabbit food or some flowers that a rabbit would eat, or some green grass or some leaves or something fun like that. But just make sure whatever you do, paint those fun little extra props and characters to your scene. Okay, so now I'm going to set my orange brush down. I'm just going to wipe some of that off. I always kind of keep a baby wipe on hand to do that. So the next thing I do is I'm gonna go ahead and pick a little bit of this really, really pale light pink. So we are going to find another tiny little brush. And we just want to do a little bit of a bunny nose, nothing too crazy, just a little bit to say, hey, that's my nose, I'm adorable. And you can just plop it on right at the little front spot. You could add other things to it, but this is all I want. It's just a little bit of a triangular shaped nose. So now you have a little bit of a bunny nose here. Okay, so now we have all of our main features done. We are going to set this guy aside and we need to paint our cardboard. So I'm gonna paint mine green. You could absolutely do anything you want. You could go any shades that you like. So I'm just gonna take this and I'm gonna go one stroke up and down, up and down. I love this color. This is called Shamrock Green. And this is just such a nice shade because it's sort of a matted green. It's not that real, you know, bright holiday or Kelly green. It's just a soft color, very springy. It's gonna really accent our our orange carrots. If you want, you can totally go into the sides of your cardboard if you like. One thing you want to keep in mind with acrylic paint is that acrylic paint tends to stain your clothes. So if you're using acrylic paint, like I am, you want to make sure that you wear a shirt or an apron. Definitely push up those sleeves if you have long sleeves like I do. If it gets on your fingers or it gets on your hair or it gets on your fingernails, it comes off super easy just with water. So don't stress. It's just that if you get on your clothes, you want to make sure that you wash them immediately. Okay. So you've got your green cardboard here. We're going to set that aside. Now we're going to go ahead and pick out some flowers. So I'm going to pick out 2 flowers here. I'm going to pick out this nice bright pop, I think, for this guy, and I'll probably pick out 2. Okay, let's see. Maybe we'll do this little guy with it. I think those are nice shades, really springy and happy. I'm also just going to find some stems or leaves or something from some of these flowers, just as like a little ending to my carrot. So it looks like a little bit of a carrot stem. So we will take, let's say, we'll do maybe one of these guys, and then I will grab probably this guy over here. So I'll take my scissors, and it doesn't need to be super long, but I'm probably just gonna do it maybe about here. I'll cut the ending of this guy right here. And the same for this one. Okay, so we've got a couple of little stems for our carrots. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring our green cardboard over here. We're going to take our tacky glue. Tacky glue I refer to as patience glue because it takes a really long time to come out. It's very thick, it's very slow, so you have to be patient. Some of these come, you can buy them at the Dollar Tree or you can buy them at any craft store, but some of them come now where the lid is actually on the bottom, which is great, so you can just keep it like this. But if it doesn't and the lid comes on top, I tend to just keep it flat, and I always say, okay, I'm just gonna leave it on my belly, leave it on its belly. So we'll take our lid off, and I'm gonna say, okay, where do I want my rabbit to go? Any which way. I'm gonna keep it probably in the back area first, so sort of back to middle, and I'm just going to do a nice strip on our first little guy here. All right, setting that down, I'm gonna bring our rabbit back over, and I'm going to gently peel up my rabbit, and you could even use a little spatula, and I'm just going to set him down right onto our green. Okay, so we've got our rabbit. Again, keep that little wipe on hand so you can wipe your little brown fingertips off. Now, let's go ahead and add our flowers. So our first flower, I'm just gonna do a little bit of a dollop of some glue here. I'm gonna put it right on our flower, really any which way you want. You could put it on the cardboard too if you like. So we're gonna put this here, and I'm just gonna set it right next to my rabbit just so that he looks like he's been maybe sitting in there for a little bit. I'll take a little bit on this one as well. Okay, throw that lid on, and I'm just going to set it right on top. It's kind of fun when these flowers lay on top of each other just so that it looks natural. If you get a little bit of white glue somewhere that you don't want, don't stress about it. That will actually dry nice and clear. Okay, so we've got our rabbit. we've got our carrots next. Okay, so our carrots need to go on, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick on our little stems. So I'm going to stick on a stem to my first one. I'm just going to push it right in. Set it down. Grab our next stem. Push it right in. Okay, now I need to find where I would like to put my little carrots. Okay, I think I'm gonna just sort of lay them on top of each other. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my first carrot. I'm just gonna put a little bit of glue on the underside. And I'm going to lay one right here. I'll take the second one. And again, put a little bit of glue on the back. Don't worry if some of that white glue shows initially, and you can just set it maybe right on top, anywhere you want, just to make it look natural. If you feel like, hey, you know what, some of my glue, some of my paint has sort of been pulled off by my fingertips, just go in and touch up a little bit. You don't need a lot, just a little bit, just to brush it on. Okay, so now we've got our super cute little scenery here. We've got the flowers, we've got the lop ears, we've got that sweet little face. The last thing that I like to do is I like to add that little reflection dot on the bunny's eyes. And I feel like this, no matter what character, whether it's an animal or a human, it doesn't matter, adding this the white little reflection dot always seems to open those eyes up. So what I like to do is I take one of the brushes that I've used, typically one of the smaller ones, and I flip it over and I use the back side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip just barely a little tiny bit of white right there. So I have a little tiny bit on my brush, and I'm just going to go, and I'm gonna go in the back corner of the eyes. So I'm just gonna gently pop a little bit one, and go to the other side, just like that. That way it just really seems to open it up, and you guys can see how that worked. You went from an all black eye to having a little bit of a reflection spot. And that is how you create your bunny. Remember, make it your own. None of my bunnies will ever look exactly the same or identical, so have fun creating your own style. You can do them all different colors. You could do a large bunny and a small bunny. You could do 3 little bunnies. You could do Peter Rabbit. You could add a ribbon or a bow. Have fun with it. If you guys have any questions and you want some help, I'd love to help you. This is what I do, so we will continue on with a few more tutorials as we go. I love to draw, I love to use paints on canvases, on watercolors, all of that. So we'll have a lot of fun drawing and painting together. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.